somebody that knows somebody.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna try to get up there to the new African American Museum this summer.
From top to bottom.
Can I borrow $10?
Don't make me curse you up here at the thing.
White Museum. That long to go through on the road.
What's
Go
that
through it.
Oh, she's still passing it.
What's that? What's that?
Oh, okay, I didn't know if you wanted to.
What's that, the right?
Oh, I got one downstairs too.
It's all African American.
So we don't do the pledge for a special meeting?
Oh, can I protest?
Nope, not for you.
Sure.
Like to call this meeting to order. Welcome to tonight's special council meeting. Please silence your cell phones. Roll call vote. Councilmember Barnes. Okay. Thank you, Attorney Harkness. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember
Roll
Barnes,
call.
Here.
Reed,
Here.
Brown,
Here.
Spicer,
Here.
Lawler,
Here.
French,
Here.
and Mayor Brown.
Thank you. Are there any public comments? Seeing that no one's in the audience, I will assume that there are none. We entertain a motion for closed session. The city.
Support?
It's been moved and supported. Just wanted to say for the record, this is a closed session to consider the dismissal, suspension, disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against, or to consider a periodic personnel evaluation of a public officer. Long story short, this is the city manager's evaluation. So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Mayor?
Yes, yes,
If I could for a moment.
yes.
It's my understanding that for the evaluation, it's up to me as the city manager to determine if it's requested for a closed meeting or not.
Yes.
So one of the options I have is to have it in an open meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And in light of some of the comments that were in the packet, and in light of the fact that I haven't had a chance to fully review it,
Mm-hmm.
I think we should at least consider having the discussion in an open meeting.
Okay, that's fine. Is there action that we need to take for that, since we just moved in? We need to vote down the closed, motion for the closed?
I think the motion becomes moot by virtue of the manager requesting that it be done in open session.
Okay,
So I think the motion fails due to mootness.
okay. So we will, sorry.
Do we need a support?
No, it just fails because it's moot.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so being that Dr. Mitchell has requested an open session, we will proceed with the city manager evaluation. Yes.
I need to take a privilege. I left my paperwork in water and cup downstairs. So I'll see it right back.
Where'd you go?
I read formatted, so you need the question next point.
Where'd you go?
She's usually not here for the manager's evaluation.
No.
Straight off the highway?
I'll be called big truck in front of City Hall.
Hey, whatever works.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Take a deep breath.
question, or how do you want to do it? So I guess the best way to go through this would be question by question. Question 1 is broke up into 2 parts. Leadership: provide strong leadership, effective management, and direction to program efforts.
I just need to take a minute because, oh,
What? Councilmember Spicer.
thank you. I need to take a minute just to review the evaluations that were submitted and the summaries, because I didn't have this prior to the meeting. I don't know what happened, but I didn't see it, so, I mean, you can proceed, but I'm just gonna be reviewing this, making comments, and I may make a comment later after I, so, that's all I'm gonna state, thank you.
We could entertain a motion for a 5-minute recess if that will give you time to review.
Okay, can I motion that we have a 5-minute recess to provide, time for review of all evaluations submitted with regard to the city manager.
Is there a second?
Second?
It's been moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so we'll have a 5-minute recess.
We are back from recess. Ms. Jill's not here. We'll just do a,
I'm doing the,
oh, okay, roll call.
I'm sorry, you want me to do roll call? Okay.
Yeah, just for recess.
Councilwoman Spicer,
Here.
Councilwoman Brown,
Here.
Councilman Barnes,
Here.
Councilwoman Reed,
Here.
Councilwoman Lawler,
Here?
Councilman French. Here. And Mayor Brown.
Here. Is there any public comment this evening?
We did
Oh,
that.
you already did, okay.
We're in closed session already.
Or open
session.
session. Okay, is there a motion for, well, okay, I see what you did, okay. So we're still on item 4, but it's open session.
Yes.
Okay, so everyone should have an Excel output that has all the scores. It's been modified to include, I guess, the what each of the questions were, and then each of the scores from the council members. And then you should also have, I know it was sent electronically, the comments from each of the evaluations, so, you know, usually we will kind of just kick off with comments. I don't know if anyone wants to begin or want to point out any particular areas in their evaluations that they wanted to speak to. Councilmember Barnes.
Concerning the first question, leadership, I feel that Cheryl has shown an ability to lead. She's been very charismatic, and she's been able to get the city employees to follow. And with her vision, she's balanced the budget. We've come to agreements with unions. Haven't had a work stoppage. I think that she's a free thinker in her management skills. She has an open mind, and she's a critical thinker when it gets into the project management of the whole situation of being a city manager. And in the city charter, it's an ongoing process. She's networking with the city attorney and us as a council. She's a very big face of the city in civic projects all over the city. I mean, she's a member of the Rotary Club. She leads events through her office with the assistant city manager. She takes her social life into the city and mingles with the citizens. She created the Team Albion Media. She posts all television and internet emergencies concerning Albion that we are made aware of, and she posted those all. She makes the best decision at the time of strategic research based on best available information at the time, putting that decision in action. Again, she's balanced the city budget every year. I call it the rainy day situation. We've doubled that above the 15% recommendation. Her personnel management is open door policy. She's been fair and equitable in negotiation with unions management. When it comes to the 2017 goals, this is where I really give her a lot of credit, even because most of those are an ongoing situation. She handles them well. She works with those project management leaders. She works well with our public safety department and every aspect of concerns in this high climate of anxiety among American citizens. Mrs. Mitchell has led the charge with Deputy Chief Kern with Police Community Relations. We have one of the best relationships with our citizens and our police department than we've had in 10 or 15 years, and it is evolving. I think that Mrs. Mitchell works too many hours. She comes in sick or well. She misses lunch a lot, or she gets half of her lunch. I'm constantly telling her to take her vacation time, go to lunch, that, the activities will be here, and that she has a strong staff and a supporting council behind her. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further council members who want to share? Councilmember French.
So, I'm commenting on question one because that's the format that we set.
Say again.
I'm gonna comment on question one because that was the format that we set. Is that agreeable? Mayor Pro Tem set up, before we went to recess, this idea that we would comment on each question as we went through. Have we changed that, or we're just gonna make general comments?
I think it's really, usually when the managers have elected to do this in closed session, I think we've kind of just allowed council to speak to whatever. So I mean, if you,
Right, that's fine.
yeah, yeah. Councilmember French and then Councilmember Brown.
Thank you. I think that, in my being on council for the last 7 years and having worked now with 3 city managers, I can say without a doubt that our current city manager is probably the best one we've had. I have apologized to her many times about not voting for her when we first appointed her. It's the biggest mistake of my professional life, and I think that she has more than shown her mettle in terms of dealing with the issues that face our city. City manager's job is a thankless one because no one tells you what a great job you're doing, but they always want to complain about the job you're not doing. As Councilman Barnes has indicated, it's a job that really needs, in this city, with all of the issues that we have, it's really not a job for one person, but she does well. I think about her ability to collaborate, and that's how a single person can do such a good job in any position. She has collaborated with all manner of people, including AmeriCorps Vista, including with college interns, including with organizations and consultants that have brought the best that there is to our city. I think about all of her accomplishments working with just Danielle Nelson over the 3 years that she was involved in the city as an intern at the college and then as an AmeriCorps Vista. I think about her ability to work with EDC and things like the capital and redevelopment ready communities, working with Vista on initiatives about dealing with blighted properties, working with the land bank to get the Dalrymple School knocked down. All these sorts of leadership things that were on our list as a council, and were on our list for many years before her arrival, she's making action out of. The fact that we had the EDC come and talk to us about a project, that's never happened before. We get asked our opinion about whether or not to bring a solar generating station to the 425 project. The fact that that happened is a testament to the leadership that Cheryl has, because I'm sure that Amy could have just gone to her board and said, we're gonna make a call. And Cheryl being on that board and being a voice that Amy listens to gives her authority and say, maybe you should bring it to the council for a conversation. Not necessarily a vote, but a conversation so that they can see the work. We can see the work that they're doing. And And that transparency, that ability to connect with partners, is a valuable one. She sees her abilities as an extension of her leadership team. So encouraging her leadership team to get training, encouraging her leadership to do the extra thing, to spend a little extra time, engaging with our citizens, but also engaging with staff to help them be as good as they can be. We've faced all kinds of challenges. This council, with its leadership absent from the city on a day-to-day basis, makes her job that much more difficult. So the fact that she's able to engage and get stuff done, she owns her mistakes, she's apologized to council for those mistakes, and those mistakes are clearly outlined in some people's evaluation. But I think that her ability to work as outlined in the position description as the one who deals with the day-to-day management, I would say that the comments that we've received from some council people speak to her strengths, but also speak to her frustration with the fact that we have some on council that wish to be more involved in the day-to-day operations of the city. Of particular note, her ability to hire and appoint people to positions in the city without consultation of the council. That is clearly within her purview, and yet she gets dinged on it in the review. So this presupposition that council is somehow, some members of council are getting more information than others is erroneous at best. The fact that she has been able to weather the storms that have affected other cities, and to put us in a position of strength with regard to our budget. The fact that structures in place, the temptations to use resources unwisely, as other cities have done, she has not done. So pulling in a balanced budget with no concerns on an audit 2 years in a row and have a budget surplus in excess of $100,000 last year is testament to her financial abilities and her ability to manage a budget. And I think all the complaints that we see, all the concerns that are lodged against her in this review speak to a lack of understanding of what the day-to-day operations are. So bringing grant proposals to us in a short time frame is not a weakness of Cheryl, but is actually a weakness of others who are writing grants that need the city. So to ding her for that, I don't think is fair. The fact that we are having an open dialogue tonight instead of a closed session, I think speaks to our city manager's concern that she's not being treated fairly. And that she wants the rest of our population to know where that criticism is coming from. So while I'm a little uncomfortable with that, I respect her decision as a city manager to allow the rest of the city to understand the processes that we go through. I applaud her for being open and transparent, and to let those comments come forth so that people can see where the concerns are, and that we can then move forward in negotiating a contract for our city manager for the years to come, with everybody knowing what everything is about. Thank you.
Privilege, please.
Actually, Councilmember Brown, then Councilmember Reed.
Thank you, Mayor. So I too commend Dr. Mitchell for an open meeting so we can openly discuss concerns. Just in response to some of the things that Councilmember French said, because I like to be specific. So I'm going to go through my evaluation. There was mention of council members not being aware or wanting to be involved in day-to-day operations. I don't know if that was specific to comments I made or not, but I will outline the concerns that I have. In my opinion, evaluations are an opportunity to give constructive criticism. There's always room for improvement, so I would hope that my comments and concerns are taken with an open mind, and not with a feeling that I want to ding somebody or be more in control of day-to-day operations. So one of the comments and concerns that I had, was with the job postings. I can speak personally. I don't want to control the city manager's ability to appoint anybody to any position. The concern I had was about positions not being posted and open to the public so people could apply. In no way does posting a job take away the city manager's ability to hire whomever she sees fit. So, with the proposal of that resolution, there was pushback. And I noted that on the evaluation. As a council person, I have every right to do that as a concern. Again, in my opinion, evaluations are an opportunity for constructive criticism and an opportunity for growth, not for any personal whatever. I don't even know what the thoughts are at this point. But another concern I had was the recommendation of the Albion Marshall Connector. There was a flyer that was circulated, and Dr. Mitchell and I talked about this. There was a flyer that was circulated that said that the city manager was asking patrons from Albion to come to the meeting and voice their need and want for the Albion Marshall Connector. There was no invite to the chamber, who was against it. So my concern was that the city manager had emailed the Albion Marshall Connector director and asked her to get patrons to come out and say, we live in Albion and we need this service, but there wasn't an objective opinion invited to the meeting. So that was a concern that I felt I should express, and I did. Another concern I had was the healthcare grant. I feel like, and not necessarily of any fault of Dr. Mitchell's, but that was rushed and rushed on us, and in my opinion, there wasn't enough research done to make a recommendation to council when it was first presented. So yeah, that was another concern I had. Let me go through, because I want to be able to hit every single point. On the first question, leadership, let me just start there. I hand wrote that comment. And if I go over my 10 minutes, Mayor, please stop me. The goal setting session that we had, now granted, I'm new to council, but that goal setting session, in my opinion, was flipped. And when our consultant came down from MML, she agreed. What we did was get the goals of the city leaders, and then council had to tailor our goals from those goals. We put sticky notes on the council goals, but I felt like the whole process was flipped. That was a concern. Next time, I'd like to see something different. So I stuck it on the evaluation. I also noted that Dr. Mitchell is active on many boards as a representative of Albion. I'm aware of that. I commend you. I don't know how you have the energy to do it all. But I know that you're concerned about Albion's voice being at many tables, so you take that role on. And I note that, and that's appreciated. The management skills was fours for me, and I had concern. I've had a couple situations where I have received complaints and concerns from constituents. I have taken those to Dr. Mitchell, and then the department head would in turn contact me. And again, I met with Dr. Mitchell about that, because when I ask the clerk to add agenda items to an agenda, 2 council members called a special meeting about that, and that was part of pushback from those resolutions. And I feel, and that part of our orientation as new council members were not to address department heads. So me going through the proper chain of command brought the concerns to Dr. Mitchell with the hope and expectation that she would address those, and I totally have trust and confidence in her addressing those things. But in two situations, I was contacted, and I'm thinking, okay, I have no conversation for them because they report to Dr. Mitchell. So I expressed those to Cheryl, to Dr. Mitchell, excuse me. And I also was wondering if there is a policy out there for our residents, so when they have complaints, they know who to contact and what to do. Because when they bring them to me, I'm going straight to Dr. Mitchell. And if there isn't a procedure, I would like to talk about doing that, constructive criticism. I also noted that Dr. Mitchell attends all city council meetings and she provides information. I noted that she has a positive image and media coverage. There was one glitch with the recreation department receiving phone messages. I don't have an update as to whether or not that's been corrected. Again, constructive criticism. Let me see, I don't want to miss anything. I think as far as the grants, I understand things come through last minute, but knowing whether or not there's going to be a match, I would like to see that information come to council as soon as possible. Because when we're voting on money and budget stuff, I don't like to be blindsided. I like to make well-informed decisions where I have time to process information. So if there's any way that we could get whether or not there's going to be a match to a grant as soon as possible, I think I would find that most helpful. Let's see. The budget was presented in a timely manner, considering there was a change in council, but the budget was presented timely. I noted the last minute request for extra spending. Grant matching is my primary concern. I'm also concerned that the new developments in Albion are not generating tax revenue for the city. The hotel's great, the brewery's great, what's going on downtown is great, but the city is not capturing tax revenue. If there are employees down there, we'll get that, but we can't fix streets and sidewalks and do the things that our residents need. So I would like to see more focus on generating tax revenue and keeping tax revenue in the city of Albion, which is why I was very weary about the Albion Marshall Connector, because we're sending tax dollars right out of here and we're paying $30,000, well, $10,000, $15,000 to do it. So I have concerns with that. Again, constructive criticism. It's nice to see effective relationships between Dr. Mitchell and employees. Hiring decisions have been sound. However, procedure needed to be addressed. Again, that's my opinion, on the grounds of fairness and openness. Jobs should be posted, doesn't take away the city manager's ability to choose and hire whomever she sees fit. And communication with council, she's always accessible, she's always helpful. Her weekly newsletters and her reports are helpful, and great support and assistance with community meetings. So that pretty much sums up my evaluation completely. If there are still questions, I'd be more than happy to address those, or concerns, or whatever. But what I do not take lightly are empty accusations or any kind of implications that, because I feel like I gave a fair evaluation, and again, there's always improvement. There's always room for improvement. So straight fives, in my opinion, is unfair and not even realistic. But that's just my opinion. So yeah, that sums up my evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Brown. Councilmember Reed.
I see why I left one off. I didn't mark one on mine. That should have been marked. I don't know how I missed that. But I think Cheryl has been doing a fantastic job. I'm out and around and into a lot of different committees and things. And I guess you can judge a person kind of by how you hear other people talk about them. Me, myself, I know how I feel about it, because if I go to her with a problem, or if I go to her with a question, or I go to her where I need information, it's right readily available. If she doesn't have it right then, She said, I'll get it right to you, and it's not long before I get it. I'm out around in these other places and even in other cities, who are well aware of what Cheryl is doing in Albion, and very pleased with, not with that, because they would like to have it done there, but they always say, well, we hear you got a fantastic city manager and the different things that's going on. I watched the way, when Rosalind Jones was working with us, and then when she passed, Cheryl just stepped right in. We didn't miss a beat. Things kept right on moving. When Amy left, Amy Robertson left, and it was right before festival time, didn't miss a beat, just kept on moving. And I know there's been times that I, like Maurice, have emailed her back and told her, do not email me anymore. Go to sleep, go to bed, sit down somewhere, eat a sandwich, have a cup of coffee, because she will send you through an email if it's something she thinks you need to know, or if you ask her something and she's got the information, she gets back with you with it. And I appreciate her, because the ones that I've dealt with before have not been like that. There was times I did not even feel like going to them to ask a question, but, you know, or to try to solicit something. But with Cheryl, I feel very confident that she's going to do the best she can at getting the help that you need. I've had people who have complained about not, you know, things that are going wrong, and I say to them, go talk to the city manager about it. I'm sure she can help you with your problem. And they came back to me and said she did. You know, that they were glad that they had a chance to meet her and talk with her. And, you know, I just think that if it's something that's not working right, she's the type of person you can go to and talk to about it. And she will do what she can to help you. I'm glad that she did pick Stacy to work as assistant city manager, because Stacy is a very personable person. She's an easy person to work with. She just like Cheryl. If she doesn't have the answer, she's going to get it for you. You're not going to have to wait long for it either. And it seems as though the two of them work very well together. I can remember when I was teaching, I was that way. In fact, I asked the administration if I could sit in on the hiring of the parapro that had to work with me, because the type of classroom I had to have someone who could work with me because it was problematic. And they allowed me to have that say so. So, you know, I'm very pleased. I am very pleased with Cheryl as a city manager. I think she's doing her job, A1 job at what she's doing, so.
Okay, further comments from, thank you, Councilmember Reed. Further comments from Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that, for my part of the evaluation, I'm pleased with it. I hope that she is also. When doing my evaluation, I just thought that everybody has room for improvement. I did not, in my evaluation, go lower than any 4. Because of her knowledge and being able to reach out between the two Albion and Marshall communities, I just like the way she does it. I mean, I don't know how. I know she spends long hours at work. I wish she didn't have to. There's a lot of times I talked with her about her health and things like that, and I just wish that she didn't have to go overboard to get some stuff done, and you know, it's able to just go smoothly with it. But I know all jobs are not smooth. But I do like the way that she connects as far as having a relationship with me. Before I got to the council, there was things that I may be concerned about, and I was always able to go to her and talk about it. So, I like that. When I did get on council, I was still able to go and talk to her about things, as far as her giving me advice about, certain situations I've came to her to talk about as far as the council going out in the, public setting, like when we went to Lansing, I talked to her about a couple issues that I had and, how I felt like I was kinda alone in that situation, but, she gave me some great advice, and, I take that with me, and, I do apply it to my personal life also. I'm pleased with everything, and I just know that with her skills, I know, I wouldn't say I know she can do better, but I know she does better already, and I just wanna, I don't wanna put a lot of pressure on her, but I know she can, it's some more in there that I might could dig down and get. But, I am pleased with my evaluation, and I just hope that, she is also. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember Lawler. Is there any other, did you want to?
Yes.
Okay, Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to say that, in my opinion, being new to council, certainly appreciate Dr. Mitchell and her knowledge, her skills, and her background. Helps her to be the efficient and effective person that she is. I know when I came to council, she took me aside and she told me some things about the city government and how it runs, and as well as shared some other things with me. And she also indicated that if I needed any assistance, she would always be at my disposal, and I certainly appreciated that, and I have taken advantage of that, and I hope not too much. However, I do want to say that I think that we can all agree that we want the best for the city and for the citizens of Albion. And we know that no one person has everything, but I think in Dr. Mitchell, we certainly come close. Her strong administrative background, as well as her educational background, her management skills, I think all lend to her being an exceptional city manager. I do notice, have seen from the few times I've been around, I think that she is a great leader, and in my opinion, I hope that my comment with regard to leadership wasn't offensive. I just see that that Dr. Mitchell's leadership style tends to be gentle nudging, and of course that certainly is not a detriment, because a lot of times you can catch, certainly most times you catch more bees with sugar than you do honey than you do salt. Anyway, however that saying goes. But that's what I mean. So the fact that you have that personality, it works well for you, because I've talked to some city employees and they have nothing but great things to say about you and your leadership style. So I've not encountered an employee that has had really any negative things to say with regard to your leadership. Yes. And I just want to say that I just appreciate what you bring to council, and your willingness to be of assistance to us in every regard. And I don't think that you miss a beat with regard to what you should provide to council. And I don't think that you provide one thing to certain council members that you don't to others. I think I've been treated fairly, and I appreciate that. I think you keep us informed with regard to matters as timely and as possible, and I do appreciate that. I just want to say that I appreciate you and the work that you do, and I hope that that you will be here with us for a long time.
Thank you, Councilmember Spicer. So I'm going to comment, and then we'll go back around. So basically, I guess not just by matter of the mayor position, but actually longevity on the council. I was appointed, I guess, maybe like 2 months before the other council members in 2010. So this is around, I don't know, over 6 years of serving the city. I've served under, or I've worked with 3 city managers, and I think I can, heartily agree with Councilmember French that Dr. Mitchell has probably been the most effective of the managers that I've dealt with. So that's not up for debate. And I think that, in reference to why I voted to the appointment, to appoint Dr. Mitchell to city manager, really what, and I can still say that today, is it's really a matter of initiative, intellect, and, really kind of foresight. I think those are things that really impressed me about Dr. Mitchell. And, I won't, contest that lots of things have been done through the direct action of the administration here at the city, and then also with partnerships with, whether it's county leaders, whether it's state legislators, funding that in the past might have been left, on the table. We've been able to, acquire opportunities that in the past might not have been pursued. So I think that's one of the things that I can say. But I think one of the things that what I would agree with Councilmember Brown, and I actually made note of in my comments, and I guess the heart of it really is, I guess, question 5A, 5B, which are questions about judgment, adherence to policy and procedures. I think that's been something that, at least even at the council level, has been an ongoing question, right? An ongoing thing about a matter of kind of trust versus policy that is not based on a particular personality, but it's based on kind of just how things are supposed to operate, so that if there's never a issue of interpersonal friction, it's more an issue of what expectations we have in our roles as council members, and what expectations we have of the manager. And one of the things that, honestly, I probably say I've encountered with all the managers I've worked with, is this, attention with when it comes to candor and making sure that the council is best equipped to make policy decisions, financial decisions with taxpayers' money. And I think that there's always kind of a tension between the fact that, and I don't deny it, it's very hard to probably have 7 bosses with 7 different opinions, and a professional opinion, and at the end of the day, the council might go a different direction than what the manager's informed opinion might be. But what I've encountered is that sometimes that can take forms which are not helpful to that relationship. So what I basically pointed out, I'm not trying to be repetitive here, but I think the process by which we hired the assistant city manager was flawed. I think that if the public knew that the job was not posted, that would be something that would surprise them. And then the fact that that budget meeting where the council approved the job description, the council was assured that that job would be posted, and it wasn't. So I think that kind of gave me pause, because one of the things I've always said on council is that because we're so short-staffed, due to lack of funding, it's critical that when we make hiring decisions, we try to make them in the mindset that we're going to find someone who has, if possible, and if it can, we can afford it, someone who has expertise in different areas that can be useful. So, while I'm not, and I'll say this, while this is not, and we've had these conversations too, I'll say that there were some meetings with the manager, with the assistant city manager, early in the year, where some of these concerns were kind of aired. So this is nothing new that I have not spoken with the manager about. But, one of the things that I think really is kind of unfair to the city in its operations is to not allow that competition that a hiring process brings about, because, the standard qualification for, municipal administration is a Master of Public Administration. And in this case, the candidate was hired does not have that. Now, we can argue over credentials and all that, but I think that that's something that, again, my family always taught me that if you never ask, the answer is always no. So if you never go out and actually have an open process, I think the transparency is lacking, it's unfair, and then you sometimes you can actually not get the best outcome because there hasn't been that procedure. So that was one of the things that concerned me. The healthcare grant, the way that came about is, again, it was short notice. I think that the issue that I face, and I guess we're far enough from it to say that, is that the grant was never for, it was pitched to council as a chance to open up community dialogue on healthcare, when it was really an opportunity for one particular healthcare system to do market research to see whether or not it would be financially feasible to come into the community. So that means that one major healthcare service provider of our community, Allegiance, was basically completely excluded from it. There was no intention to include them. That was not the purpose of the grant. I would not have found that out if I had not spoke with the president of the college, spoken to college administrators, and really talked to that. And I think that one of the things is, if the council is being asked to make decisions like that, I think the manager should really do some of that legwork. And I think that what ends up happening sometimes with, this is to be expected with, the way the government is set up, is the manager that was mentioned earlier kind of interfaces with a lot of community stakeholders, so do the council members. And while we're accountable to voters every particular period of time, I think the manager is really accountable to the council, and as an at-will employee. And so I think that part of what the manager has to wrestle with, frankly, is the fact that you want to build up a reservoir of goodwill and good opinion with community stakeholders, so that if there is any kind of concern on council, you can go to them and say, look, I've built these relationships, I've produced these things, which was actually, I think, the reasoning behind when council was asked about, even when we considered revising the evaluation process, right, to have comments from community stakeholders to say that, okay, council, you might not see everything I do, but I think that in my experience, I feel like sometimes that becomes a detriment to the manager's recommendations to council, because if Oakland, if Star, if the college have taken a position on a grant, and the council is concerned about a fair process between two health systems, that potentially could bring a bias into the recommendation to council to approve a grant. Grant application timing. So I do agree there are going to be some times when things pop up that we just find out at the last minute and we have to go for it. So I understand that. But what I've done with since for as long as I've been on council, whether it's financial or kind of procedural questions, you know, I always go back and research and call and talk to people and whatnot. And when I've done that, there's always been a situation where there's been some weeks before that the grant was known about. For example, the grant that we did not receive relative to Irwin Avenue. You know, I talked to Mickey Bittinger about that. We knew about the match when we knew about the grant. So I think that it's helpful to us to be able to decide, you know, at least have a, you know, an initial email that there's a grant coming and it's going to cost the city money, and that'd be helpful instead of having it where, you know, I'm getting an agenda, you know, which I think happened with the, that may have been the water main project downtown. You know, agenda say, hey, we're asking for this much money, an additional $40,000 or $60,000 for a project, and you know about that the day of or so. So, you know, I think that's one of the concerns I have, and even, and I guess I'll justify myself even with the reason why I voted against the parking lot thing is, so I sit on the DDA, Councilmember Lawler sits on the DDA. That was brung to the DDA, and the DDA basically recommended not pursuing any, or the city not adding any additional money to the project and just waiting for the, I guess, the next round of grants next year. Okay, so when that was presented to council was not notified that the DDA had recommended to wait till the next year. So, you know, I think grants are great. I think that with the two previous managers I've worked with, I think there are opportunities that have not been pursued. I think they have been now. I think, you know, I would laud the manager regarding, especially the kind of special appropriations that we've received from the state in the budget to help with the water treatment plant and then also with the water tower. Those are tremendously helpful, and I think it's great work. But I think with the grant issue, we have got to come up with a better way of handling that. The Albion Marshall connector. So initially, when it came up, I guess under the previous council, Councilmember Barnes and I voted no. Went through the logic of it for me was basically, while there is no, you know, potentially property tax or income tax that's going to Marshall, the issue is that, you know, there are businesses there that do pay property taxes in Marshall, and residents are spending money with that. And I think the big thing was the fact that the city of Marshall basically refused to offer contributions towards it. So that was a big concern. But I think this last time around, I think Councilmember Brown pointed out the fact that, you know, how do you say, it's not new, because I remember when we've done previous evaluations and even when we terminated the previous city attorney, you know, the public was out. They were allies of particular, you know, people who were there to speak their minds, and so I think that's fair, that's democratic. But I do have a problem if the council is making a decision relying on the manager's professional opinion, and then on the side, there's an attempt to influence the council, the council's decision-making beyond just providing the policy, the recommendation. And so that's really kind of not, I guess, a fair thing to council, because honestly, you know, if there is an invite, it should be to everyone. Just say, hey, the council is considering this, come speak to it. The final one is, I guess, more recent, and I guess it speaks to the concern that I've experienced with being on the council, is because Albion has faced lots of financial hardships, we've had to basically find creative ways to fix problems. And so you have this tension between the policies being, you know, that we had not fitting the way the city operates, okay? And so what would happen is, for example, the policies being, you know, that we had not fitting the way the city operates, okay? And so what would happen is, for example, the policies being, you know, that we had not fitting the way the city operates, okay? And so what would happen is, for example, the policies being, you know, that we had not fitting the way the city operates, okay? And so what would happen is, for example, the policies being, you know, that we had not fitting the way the city operates, okay? And so what would happen is, for example, the policies being, you know, that we had not fitting the way the city operates, okay? And so what would happen is, for example, the policies being, you know, that we had not fitting the way the city operates, okay? And so what would happen is, for example, the policies being, you know, that we had not fitting the way the city operates, okay? And so what would happen is, for example, the policies being, you know, that we had not fitting the way the city operates, okay? And so what would happen is, for example, the policies being, you know, that we had not fitting the way the city operates, okay? And so what would happen is, for example, the poli the way in which the sidewalk assessment was set up. I had some concerns with that. That was voiced with the city attorney. He did a memo, agreed with that assessment of that situation. But, you know, I think that what ends up happening is like, you know, sometimes there's kind of pushback from the administration about those kinds of things. And I know we want to protect the city from any kind of liability from previous actions and those kinds of things. But I think the only way we're going to solve the issues that got us here is to not repeat those. And so that's why this last thing really concerned me. So it was addressed at the council meeting. Basically, the college, in an effort to kind of create a kind of space, a safe passage space between the college to downtown, has, I guess, voluntarily done infrastructure improvements, lights, repaving the streets between, what is that, Huron Street maybe, and South Superior on Cass. And so, and this is nothing new, they've done it to Hannah, and we appreciate that. But then, you know, it's come to our attention that in that same time period, there is a situation where city labor is uncompensated to fix the parking lot at the college. And so, you know, the issue there is, I think that's really at the heart, I think, of a lot of citizens' concerns in the community about fairness, about, you know, there's a gentleman who lives on 2nd Street in Precinct 1 who's come here oftentimes and says, you know, I haven't verified that yet, but probably for decades, his streets have not been fixed. And when the potholes are done, you know, the work might not be quality or whatnot. But then, and he's paying taxes. But then we have a situation where there's uncompensated labor for that work. And so I think from an optics perspective, it's not helpful, because I think there are people, when people get up and say, oh, the college or the city or whatever, and those kinds of things, you know, it doesn't help to have things that demonstrate the concern that people are having about fairness in how the city operates. This could have been fixed in a couple of ways. I'm sure the amount of infrastructure improvement along the Cass corridor was probably much greater than the labor costs that the city did. We could have probably even after that, we probably could have written up an agreement, brought it to council, have it approved. So my ending point here is to say that I do not believe that we should run city on trust in individuals. I just don't believe that. I think that the way things should operate, we should have some clear policies and procedures, because ultimately, you know, that's not a way to have accountability to say, you know, this person's a good person, I trust them. And I'm not saying I don't trust the manager, I'm just saying that there has to be a way to make sure that things are being done fairly, transparently, for the benefit of all citizens. Because I think that one thing I'll say about this council is we are leading the city at a really transformative moment. And so for us not to get it right would be a disservice to generations to come, because this is a turning point between Albion and its history of diversity and inclusion. And we know we've had this history of, I guess, prosperity based on industry. That has changed, but there are still opportunities where we can move the city forward. So I think this is not something to ding anyone. If we're going to be public, I'm going to be public about basically what I've said and what I believe, and I think that the residents are not going to oppose leadership that's calling for proper policies and procedures, accountability, transparency, and fairness for the residents. And so I think that's reflected in what I'm asking, because my evaluation acknowledges what the manager has done, but it's asking and encouraging some growth in those areas. Councilmember Barnes.
I would be remiss if I didn't make this statement concerning the city manager. Myself, I've been here 7 years, and I've been with Chief Kip the entire time. I've seen him be the Director of Public Safety. I've seen him act in absence of our city managers when they went on vacation. I've seen him sit in the seat as city manager for a period of time. I've seen Chief Kip through these 3 different city managers, and we've sat down and talked together. And some of the concerns that he shared with me as a councilman while he was the chief, sometimes he felt he wasn't in the loop. Sometimes he felt he may not have been, briefed on what was going on at the administrative level of the mayor and the city manager. Subsequently, the chief and I talked, and he himself, the guy who's in charge with safety of all of us, Albion College and the city of Albion, feels that Cheryl is the best city manager that he's worked under. And I have to use him as my reference because I talked to Tom Mead, I talked to Jim Lenderson, I talked to the department heads. And they're very satisfied with Cheryl, her vision and her direction. Tom Mead, yes, he feels he's overworked, what I do too. However, she gets glowing remarks. All of them have established that they trust her, they see her as that leader, get back to being charismatic, that we do have a charter, we have ordinances, and in no instance, for me, that I've seen Cheryl go outside of policy and procedures, make any decisions. A citizen came to me about the Albion College situation. Went to the city manager, and I received credible information on how we do collaborate with Albion College. I don't want anyone that's viewing right now to think that Albion College gets preferential treatment from this city while I'm sitting here. I have a great relationship with Ditzler, French, and others at Albion College. They're treated the same as we do. I look at some of the things that they do in collaboration with us, and that does help her evaluation because she reaches out to them, and that's part of her job as a city manager. Thank you.
Attorney Harkness.
So, obviously I don't submit an evaluation to the manager, but as the only other person that works directly with the council, I just wanted to offer a comment. Like many of you have said, I've been around for several city managers, and I think there's no other way to say that. I think Cheryl's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Cheryl and I think, talk on almost a daily basis. I think sometimes when I even don't want to hear from Cheryl, she's calling me. I think as far as managers go, I've worked for several cities. I don't think I've ever seen somebody with her work ethic. She and I don't always see eye to eye, but I think we always work very well together. And I actually find myself most frequently on Friday nights and the weekend having to email her and tell her to stop emailing me and stop working. It's Friday night, it's 9 o'clock, you need to just put your feet up. In fact, she and I were emailing at 6 a.m. this morning, so I think her work ethic is unmatched. She's a pleasure to work with. I know that the staff that I work with Cheryl speaks volumes of positive things about her, so I think she's a great asset to the city.
Thank you. Councilman Reed.
I appreciate too, I understand what you were saying about what, when it's on there, the manager recommends. I appreciate, I see what you're saying, but I like that. Because for one thing, it gives me an idea, because a lot of times I would say, well, what do you think? So it gives me an idea of how she is seeing something. Does not mean I have to take her idea, but at least it's something that shows me a direction. So, I don't know, I just appreciate it, and he's talking about the administration that works with Cheryl. I get a chance when I'm at Holland Park to work with the actual guys who do the shovel work and the dirty work, and they think that she's just absolutely fantastic too. And very seldom do you hear the person who's in the trenches that's doing the working, brag about their boss, but they do.
Thank you. Councilmember Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to add that I agree with Councilmember French about when she does make a mistake, she does apologize for it. She's done it. I've seen her done it a couple times, many a times since I've been on the board. But she does apologize for it, and a lot of people don't do that, that I know of. I haven't been in politics a long time, but to me, when you have morals and you say, I'm sorry, that says a lot about a person, and that's just me personally. So I just wanted to put that out there. She apologizes, she says it won't happen again, and me, myself, and I can only speak for myself, I truly believe that what she says is for real. So I think that's just about it for me for tonight.
Okay. Councilmember French.
Thank you. In response to your comments, Mayor, I was looking at your written evaluation. You did not turn in a numerical one except an Excel spreadsheet, but of the 5 things that you were concerned about, Marshall Connector was passed by this council. The grant issues that you have concerns about was passed by the council. And I look at the data from the evaluation sheet, and 5 of the 7 of us who put in probably as much effort as everybody else on the council did in their evaluation are rating our city manager at 4s and 5s. And so my concern is that as we evaluate our city manager's performance and we look at all of these issues that we're making our assumptions on, my concern is that the things that the council voted on, that you voted against, are now being seen or translated as weaknesses or concerns of our city manager's performance. I also like to comment on the first page of your evaluation, section 5A. You say, quote, I view the city manager as the chief advisor of the council, and in that capacity, the manager must strive to be as unbiased and candid as possible. And my concern with that sentence is that, in fact, unbiased implies that you have no opinion about something.
Point of order, Mayor, please.
On what?
Councilmember French is evaluating your evaluation.
No, it's fair for him to do that. Because I'm gonna respond, but it's fair.
No, I'm just, what I want to get to is this concern that you also then quoted, just say, we should not run our city based on trust. That policy and procedure should be the blanket test of what we have. And I can understand your point about the policy and procedures, and I agree, we need to get more of them. The problem with policy and procedure about every single thing is to take the humanity out of government and take the humanity out of leadership. And the fact that you have clearly indicated that you go through life not trusting rather than trusting. So to continue is a concern, because based on what you just said, that is my opinion of my interpretation of what you just said. So to get back to what you wrote, as candid as possible to enable council to make the best decision possible based on the manager's advice and the input from the public. So the manager's advice, which you've now said you don't trust, and and the fact that you want her to be unbiased, what I sense is a conflict in your evaluation, because what you want is to take the public's input and the manager's input and come upon a decision that you feel is the best interest of the public, correct? And so,
Point of order again, Mayor Brown.
please, let me finish my point.
This is an evaluation of the city manager. This is
And I
not an
get it.
evaluation of the mayor's evaluation
If you-
of the
So,
city
I'm-
manager.
So to respond to your point of order, I'm going to allow Councilmember French to continue, but then I'm going to reply, so,
Privilege.
okay.
So I think what we have, again, based on what the majority of the council views as our city manager's abilities, and its disconnect with you and Councilman Brown's evaluation, that is a concern that I have. Because if we are to preserve the relationship that we have with our citizens and with our city leadership, we have to be of a better mind in terms of what we expect of our city manager. And so my concern is that, as I said, right, not to be circular, you've expressed concern about the healthcare grant. You've expressed concern about grant application timing. The one example you gave about a good example of timing was a grant that we wrote. It was not written by a local nonprofit or anybody else. And sometimes that reality is not even at the, none of us knew about the rural healthcare grant until we got the packet. I think our manager had 2 days. Regarding the parking lot repairs, yeah, she's apologized for that. That's a legitimate concern. But I just want to say that we as a council have expectations of our city manager, and for the most part, all of us, well, 5 of our 7 find no issue with our city manager. And yet you do. And so, I'm just concerned about that.
So, I guess in response to that, so basically, at the beginning of this council term, there were, some questions about qualifications for its members. And what eventually became of that was the idea that going forward, when individuals pull packets to run, their status, just like we do for other boards and commissions, their status, tax status, all those kinds of things, should be checked in. That's kind of a procedural fix, right? That wasn't there, wasn't thought of. That has nothing to do with trust. That's something that did not happen. It caused a problem. We recognized the problem it caused. And so next time in 2018, or in, June or July of 2018, once everything's pooled, the clerk's probably going to go through the process of checking, like we do for all boards and commissions, to make sure that all candidates know way in advance of the election that they're in good standing.
Point of order.
So that's really, Councilmember Barnes.
My point of order is based on, with all due respect, I feel you and Councilman French are having a sidebar conversation that is not directly concerning the evaluation of our manager. We gave our evaluations, checked the scores, she gets a chance to speak. You guys are having a conversation on your disagreements of your evaluation. You guys keep critiquing each other, and
Yeah.
with all due respect, that's not why we're here.
Good point. You're right. I'm going to acknowledge, Councilman, thank you for your explanation. You're right. He explained it in a better way. I think he's right. I think that's going to be an ongoing question, but I think the one thing I'll say is that when we give evaluations, we're evaluating as council people.
As
So, your experience might be different than someone else's, and that's life, actually. So, thank you. Councilman Brown tried to show me the error of my ways, and you. Thank you, Councilman Barnes. City Manager, Dr. Mitchell, if you'd like to have comments.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone taking the time to offer their comments, both kind and otherwise. One thing I do want to point out is that I am deeply concerned. Although most of the scores were complimentary and supportive, I'm troubled by some of the written comments that I received, particularly from the mayor and mayor pro tem. Although particular situations were mentioned, it was my understanding, and it's stated in the evaluation form, that when completing the evaluation, please remember that this should be a reflection of the city manager's overall performance and not based on a specific issue or item of performance or action. So it appears that there might have been some deviation from that, but because some specific points were made, I do want to take an opportunity to respond to them. The most recent in which the mayor indicated that in regards to the qualifications for candidates for city council, I would disagree with you. That is not a policy and procedure. It's actually a reflection of the candidates doing their own due diligence to determine what are the qualifications and if they meet them. Nonetheless, because we did have a situation that arose, we are now putting those policies and practices into place. So hopefully in the future it won't occur again. It doesn't mean that it won't occur again, but at least people will know earlier in the process that they are not meeting the qualifications based on our own charter relative to being eligible for office. Probably what causes me the most consternation is references to my being open and transparent and candor and not in compliance with having a trustful relationship with the mayor and council. And it doesn't seem to matter how many times I tell you, when I get the information, I make it available to you. There's a fundamental disrespect in regards to what I do and how I do it. So, in regards to the Albion Marshall Connector, they were coming to do a presentation. I shared the email communication with you. I indicated that they were doing a presentation, if they had a PowerPoint, and if they would like to invite perhaps 2 people who use the service. That was the extent of my communication. At no time did I assert or encourage or advocate that they bring an outpouring of residents. That was the decision of someone else. A number of things listed here are actually the actions of someone else, but you're attributing them to me. I'll own what I do, but I will not accept being reprimanded for something for which I'm not responsible for. I did not reach out to the chamber or anyone else in opposition to the AMC because that wasn't my role at that point. I was simply trying to support someone's effort to make a presentation and have support there with them. And no matter how you might feel relative to my position on any issue, I don't vote. You don't pay me to be neutral. You pay me to provide you with the best information that I can and to let you know what my recommendation might be. I don't vote. When it comes to determining which street gets paved, our staff does research. We try to be fair and balanced across this city. Ultimately, this body is the one that makes a decision, not me. I administer your decisions. In regards to the rural health care grant, I shared with you the entire email chain from the moment I was first told about it. I too had a conversation with the college president, and apparently we have a different interpretation of what he thought was happening, and perhaps circumstances changed because it was fast moving. But in any way to say that I was withholding evidence or that I did not provide you with the information that you needed, I gave you exactly the information that I had. The grant match that seems to be the most problematic seems to be the one related to the parking lot. What we submitted was, I believe it was an 80-20 match requirement. They came back with closer to a 50-50. As soon as we had that information, you had it. If you want to know further in advance, then simply have a policy. Whenever you submit a grant application, let us know so that we know what the grant match requirement might be. And I would disagree when it comes to relative to the street grant, because we told you in advance. Everyone wanted to know, when was Irwin Street going to be paved? It was the same process that come around every 3 years. And every 3 years, we have a local match. So the fact that a match would be required should not be news to anyone. There was a mention relative to tax capture. Nothing from nothing leaves nothing. There are efforts underway to start development and redevelopment of our downtown and our corridors and our neighborhoods. Some of those are long-term investments. So the hotel was a vote of this body relative to allowing the tax capture. That was not my decision. That was the decision of this body. So why would it be mentioned in my review? So some of these issues that you have a deep concern with, it really should be an evaluation of what are the votes that you are taking and not of my performance. I simply administer the choices that you make. Ultimately, what we do have here is a failure to work together. Ultimately, what we have here is a dissatisfaction with my job performance by the two main leaders of this body. And very specifically, the mayor gave me a 2.5 for management skills relative to my willingness to try new ideas and approaches when proposed by the council members or staff. And I would differ with that. You asked in regards to the Google approach. That was being investigated. I provided the preliminary information. So I don't know when is the time that anyone would think that I'm not providing them with the information that's requested. What's very concerning is a 2 out of a 5 relative to my judgment and decision-making. So, I think clearly a decision needs to be made relative to the future of the leadership here, and very specifically relative to my role. And I think that decision needs to be made by both of us.
So I'm going to take privilege here and just, so there are nuances, and I being on council, being mayor, interacting with the manager, the attorney, department heads, workers when I encounter them, just the various sides, you get kind of shades of nuances on different kinds of things. And so just to clarify the logic of, for example, the Irwin Ave, that was an ICE grant, correct? Because there is an ongoing cycle of major street improvements that kind of bounces back and forth between the county and the city. But in that case, that was a $1 million plus grant. So that wasn't just the standard procedure, that was an ICE grant that we would have had to make a match to. The healthcare situation, I should not have to reach out to Allegiance and ask them, are they aware of something like that? Are they aware of the grant? Would they be willing to do that? Because once the council initially voted down the grant and the public became aware of it, actually the vast majority of people who were made aware of it in the community thought it made sense. It says, why would you single out one particular healthcare system and not provide an opportunity for them both to be involved in the process? So, I can, if we talk about trust, if I would hope that those kinds of further investigation would not have to be done by council members. I mean, it is our role to do in some instances, but I think that was a concern there, is that if after we initially voted it down, it came back, it was approved. I don't think it's been awarded. I don't know what became of it, but the issue is that what I'm expecting is kind of that further effort, because if we're saying, if I ask the representatives, have they contacted Allegiance, would they be interested in it? And I'm asking as the mayor and on behalf of residents, I think that it becomes a legitimate issue to kind of look into. In terms of the Google thing, what we received was an oral report, but I think one of the things, we can go back and watch the meetings, I think what I asked is for some kind of memo, some kind of financial report, some kind of breakdown of, could it be a la carte, versus just, was it possible just to do, the Google email versus having full-blown Google Docs, which is, I talked to Councilmember French about that. Microsoft Office is more robust than Google Docs, even though Google Docs is a little bit more accessible. What I get at when you mentioned kind of new and innovative. Question 6 was which one was it? Grab that question. The question about kind of willingness to try different things. I think what my ongoing motivation has been on council is to do things efficiently and fairly. So that's kind of the twin test when something, I have to make a decision, kind of what comes before me. And so I know there's always room for more efficiencies. And so when I bring things to council, that's what I have in mind. And I will say this, because we're on it. When we had the goal-setting session, something that really concerned me, and it kind of set with me, is the council was going through making these determinations about how we wanted to prioritize things. And one of the things that, like a side comment that was made by the assistant city manager was basically to the effect that, if the council prioritizes all these things, we have these other things on deck and we're working on, and how will the council's goals affect the priorities and projects that we are currently working on or have planned out for. Now, I can understand that, because I know that there's, you do have to plan out for certain things. We have to plan out for example, on the Planning Commission, we had a discussion at the last meeting about the zoning changes and how long that would take. So you do have to plan out. But how that struck me and kind of gave me kind of pause and concern was that if council comes through and says, we want to focus on redeveloping Harvard site. We want to focus on repairing parks. We want to focus on healthcare access, even though that's not something we have direct control over. I think that what council, the goals and policies that council set, those have to be prioritized. And I know that, you know, it's not lost on me that the fact that we have to, which has not been the case, you know, in some cases in the past, we were talking about the 425, about the relationship between the city and the township. You know, bad blood can kind of hinder projects from going on. So I get the fact that we don't want to run afoul of the college, we don't want to run afoul of county leadership, the state, the Marshall School District. We don't want to do any of those kinds of things. But at a certain point, we do have to act in what's the best interest of residents. And I think that that's what I'm trying to highlight is we need to have goals that prioritize job creation here, that prioritize neighborhood stabilization. I think that's one of the things I mentioned in my evaluation is I've received many complaints about code enforcement. And one of the things that I actually suggested during the council session is there are cities that, and even Chief Kipp mentioned at some point, the city deputized officers for code enforcement. They knew the code. And some kind of way we got away from that. And so to me, it made sense to pursue that. And I will acknowledge the manager did suggest setting up, you know, a committee to do that. But for me, I just felt that that would slow down the process and really kind of prevent us from just looking at the fact that do we want to, you know, hire a particular extra body, or do we want to, Councilmember Barnes? Well,
She was first. Go ahead.
okay, so to finish up, because I don't want to keep going. The points you're making, I hear what you're saying, but like I said, there's nuance to everything. There have been times, and I'll be honest, there was a time when what the practice of the council has been, and maybe we need to kind of codify that and put in rules, is to have, like this evening's a public meeting, or it's a special meeting, so it's being recorded and televised. Work sessions, we traditionally don't do that, just to allow for, you know, further dialogue and informality. The meeting we had for, to decide whether or not we would, how the evaluation would actually be structured was a work session. And I was asked at that previous meeting about, would it be recorded? I clearly indicated that to the manager, to the technician at the time. I show up at the meeting, and it's a completely different thing than what was requested. So that's a small thing, but the thing is, those things add up in terms of just the relationship and the confidence in how things are operating when I am asked to have input and provide that leadership, it's kind of undermined. So I think that, again, if we're running everything off trust, that's not the way to do it. I mean, there's a place for that, but I think a lot of that can be dealt with, you know, there's a reason, for example, the charter requires us to have monthly financial reports. That has not always happened in the packets this year. So that's a charter requirement. That's not a trust requirement. That's basically, so if council, any particular council member wants to do that, they can look at it and stay abreast of that. So with that, I'm going to stop. You said Councilmember, okay, so Councilmember Brown and Councilmember Barnes.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to respond to some of the things that Dr. Mitchell stated. In terms of the evaluation, we rated from 1 to 5, with 1 being unacceptable, 2 needs improvement, 3 satisfactory, 4 very good, and 5 exceptional. Overall, my evaluation of Dr. Mitchell in her role as city manager was a 3.8, which falls above satisfactory and just below very good. So the feeling that you were being reprimanded is a little concerning for me. Again, I stand by my evaluation, and I would hope that you would take the comments as constructive criticisms, and that you would take it in with an open mind. Separate the personal from the professional, and just really take it in. The feeling that you've been reprimanded and that the mayor and the mayor pro tem don't have, I can't remember the exact wording you used, but basically that we're not happy or satisfied with your performance is mind-blowing when I look at your overall numbers. I mean, there are specific things that I can only speak for myself that I mentioned in my evaluation, but overall you got just below very good, 3.8. So to feel like you were reprimanded, it just doesn't sit well with me. That was not my intention for you to take it that way. And again, I hope that you take the comments and the evaluation that I did with an open mind and as really constructive criticism moving forward. Thank you.
Councilmember Barnes.
I'm trying to wrap myself around this, because for me, I came here tonight to hear the performance evaluations from each and every one of us concerning the city manager. And for me, somewhere along the line, I think the conversations concerning the different items that weren't achieved, that should have been achieved, are not evaluations. I'm to the point where it's almost like it was a tit for tat, and I just don't think that I really, in the totality of this meeting, other than seeing the number 4.5, that's the number I think that was the aggregate of all of us for sure, 4.5. And some of what I felt was infighting, I just don't think that should be part of evaluation. That's just my observation of some of the things that I've heard. Thank you.
And I will comment that past practice has been, when we report out to the public, is really that composite number. Usually that's, we've had executive sessions, the, managers within the open meetings statute, gives that discretion to the employee to have evaluations in public or private, but all the managers I've worked with, I've always had something positive to say and have something, areas for growth. And like I said, I think, I guess the only difference is, we're doing a public session, but usually the only thing that the public usually gets is, that composite number. So, but I think that I stand by my evaluation. Like I said, I assume, or not assume, but I acknowledge the work that has been done. I just chose to focus on things that I know, if improved, would improve the relationship and administration and governance of the city. Councilmember French and Councilmember Spicer.
So, City Manager Dr. Mitchell, your last statement is the thing that is most concerning to me. Because what I hear you say is that, unlike in years past where we on the council had the foregone conclusion that really you were very much interested in staying and being part of this community's revitalization. And that the only thing we had to tweak was things like compensation packages and the like. And what I heard you say just now really scares me, because it actually indicated to me that that you've grown in your concern that maybe you wouldn't say yes to a contract. And that really scares me, because I think you are a brilliant woman, an amazing leader, and had been a great city manager, and I thoroughly enjoyed our 3 years together. And if I or this council can do anything to help you stay, to right a ship that you feel is gone off course, or to engage in different sorts of behaviors that will give you a desire to stay. And maybe I'm overreacting to your comment, but I'm really concerned that, unlike last year, this year you are expressing to us a deep concern that your leadership is insufficient. And to me, nothing could be further from the truth. So I appeal to you to, I've decided that I would like you to stay. I think the valuation of the vast majority, if not everybody in this council, is for you to stay. But to take heart in that, we will work hard to help make that decision to stay easy. Thank you.
Just a point of clarification, the contract is not expiring. So it's still in effect, so that's really not kind of a moot point. Councilmember Spicer.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I simply want to say that I heard Dr. Mitchell, her heartfelt, deep concerns with regard to what she feels is the council's leaders not being appreciative of her work efforts, abilities, and things of that nature. I hear that, and I want to just say that I also want the council to realize that Dr. Mitchell did state some concerns that she had with regard to the leaders not having deep trust and faith in her, and that I want us to consider that and take that to heart as well. That not only should she hear us and what we have, we need to hear her as well, because this is a two-way street. I mean, and I want to know that the people that I have put in leadership positions on this council are listening to her as well, and that you can hear her and understand some of her concerns, just as you want her to hear and understand yours. Leaders should be able to lead and direct, and I want to know that the people that I've chosen and voted for to put in leadership position in this council hear that, and will do the right thing and hear from her as well. That's it.
Councilman Brown.
I'll take the cough, that's all.
Okay. Councilman Brown.
I'm gonna pass.
If
If
there,
I might.
City Manager Mitchell.
Okay, I keep hearing that you want a leader who has the best interests of the community at heart. Yet some of my actions don't reflect that. And you're entitled to your opinion in that regards. But I think I provided you with a 6-page summary of just highlights of what I've done just this past year. What I find most disconcerting is the repeated reference to my hiring practices. Prior to hiring the assistant city manager, And during the reorganization, that was all made public. I conferred with our legal counsel. He clearly stated that I had the right and privilege and responsibility to make that appointment. There was no requirement that it be posted. We had a temporary job filling in regards to the reorganization when the human resources coordinator retired. The individual who stepped in did an exceptional job. And I find it insulting to imply because she has a PhD and not a master's in public administration, that her qualifications should be in question. So it's my understanding, and I would like to get clarification from our attorney. I believe it is my role in a temporary absence to appoint the person who would act as the acting city manager.
And I will say, while you're looking that up, that's not something that I objected to. I think the concern that I raised when I was speaking was the fact that during the actual budget presentation, I asked, would the job be posted? And I was given the assurance that it would be, and it was not.
And that's correct, because at that time, I was not planning on making an internal appointment to that position.
I
So,
guess.
yes, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, well, I wanna make sure we're talking about the same thing here, because I think there's a difference between an acting city manager and an
Right.
assistant city manager.
And I'm not talking about the assistant. I'm saying if I'm gone for 5 days or more, do I have the ability to appoint the person who would serve in my absence?
No, that's council.
That's count.
That's Charter Section 258. Now, as an assistant city manager, as an employee that acts under you, not in your absence, then yes, you have the authority to hire that person.
Thank you.
And council has the authority to basically approve the job descriptions and ask for, yes, we did, because that's what we did, we approved the job description. And, as well as the framework, because the thing is, I agree with, there's really not a, the disagreement is not about the ability of the manager to hire staff, and the charter is very clear that there are only 2 city officials that report to council, the manager and the attorney, and everyone else is basically direct reports to the manager. I think the concern is, really, and that's kind of what I've been saying, the concern is that historically, that the city has not been fair in its dealings, whether it's with employment, whether it's with infrastructure projects, whether it's with, a lot of different things. And so one of the things that I've always endeavored to do since I've been on council, and I'm sure the council members who have served with me since 2010 and the new council members, I don't think anyone would disagree that in that regard, that we wouldn't want to encourage fairness, efficiency, and openness in the process. So I think that I'm not calling into question the power to make the appointments. I'm saying that to the extent that the council has input, we want to make sure that the process is fair. Councilmember Barnes.
I still feel we're getting away from the evaluation itself, and we're getting into policy and procedure, the past precedent of how you and her, or maybe her and some other council people have had conversations. We're here tonight to evaluate her, let her know how we felt concerning her performance from 1 to 5 with comments. We're getting way off on tangents. I think we should move forward on that agenda item. We've been in 2 hours.
Yeah.
It's a lot of bartering. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it should stop.
Thank you. I hate to ask, is there any other comments before we move on to the union agreement? Okay. Jill's not here, but I think we can go ahead and, we usually publish that in the paper with the composite scores. She can do that. Okay, I will say, Councilman Barnes, I'm sure you remember us staying here much later, so I don't want to recreate that, but we've definitely done that.
We're experienced now.
Yes, that's true. Good point. Item 5, approval of tentative agreement between the City of Albion and the Police Officers Association of Michigan.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and seconded. This explanation from the manager.
Mayor and council, this was relative to the police officers of Michigan unit, and we did reach an agreement with them relative to a 3-year contract.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
I got some.
Councilman Barnes?
I said we approve it. I think they do a good job. I'm 100, I swear to God, I think, hey,
Oh.
I love both of them. They ain't arrested me lately and everything cool.
Councilmember French?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mitchell, for showing us the changes. Can you give me an idea of the extent of, the salary is the easy part to look at, right? The staff functions and how much will increase and things, but some of the overtime language I'm a little fuzzy on, and what are the changes that we're doing to overtime that's gonna?
I'll ask Chief Kip to come up to talk about that in detail.
Chief Kip, Albion Public Safety. As far as
I'm looking at section
the
7.
comp time, or
Compensatory time change and.
we had some language issues in the original contract that contradicted each other in that, and so we just cleaned up that language basically. It doesn't really change what they had in the previous contracts. It's just the language is cleaner.
Thank you.
So,
And then,
go ahead.
sorry. And then the follow-up, remind me again about health insurance. We, every year we approve a 90-10
Split.
split.
Voluntarily,
Right,
because.
right, but now that this is in the contract, do we have to do that?
Yes.
We still do. Okay, thank you. Right, I'm good.
Is this, has this been in the contract before that explicitly stated in the contract?
Yes, it's been in the contract all the time.
Yeah, we're still required by statute though to opt out of the 80/20.
Oh, I know that, yeah, okay, I know that.
So, I mean, we have to do that regardless of what's.
I just was, I couldn't remember if we had to do that and whether or not,
It was actually in the contract.
yeah, I couldn't remember if it was in the contract last year or not.
Councilman Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. Is this what we went over Monday?
No.
No, that
No.
was the command officers
And this
union.
is the-
This is
okay.
the officers union. Yep.
Okay. There was an issue, if I'm remembering correctly, so I'm assuming that it's been resolved, because it was taken off the agenda Monday for something to be.
No, this one was taken off the agenda Monday.
Right.
Because we hadn't had a chance to sit down with them.
Right, okay.
Initially, they were talking about wanting to do exactly what the command officers did when they found out what they did. But then they looked at it again and said, no, we don't want to do that. We want to stick with what we had.
Okay,
So it didn't change.
thank you, thank you.
Yep.
For this upcoming budget, how many, I guess, I know it's a different union, but like, how many public safety personnel are we looking, I mean, sworn officers?
Including myself, there's 18 of us.
Okay.
That has not changed since 3 years ago when we went from 19 to 18.
Okay.
And when I became chief, we had 21, we dropped to 20, and then the next year we dropped to 19.
So in this,
Or 19 then to 18.
in the upcoming budget, it's going to remain at 18 or go up, or?
Well, I presented a budget to the city manager, but that hasn't been discussed yet, so.
Okay.
I've requested an extra officer, but I'll be surprised if we get to that point.
Now, would that be, so is that including, because I'm, and I haven't followed up on that, but the, basically the,
The cops officer that we put in for?
yes.
We have not heard anything on that grant yet, so I did
Okay.
not include that in the budget.
Okay.
It's difficult to include something in the budget that I don't know whether we're gonna get it or not, so. It's probably gonna be one of those things, if we don't hear, before we approve the budget, that we're gonna have to come back to next year and say, hey, we got this money, do we want to do this?
Okay.
So,
Is there any further discussion from council on this item? Okay. Seeing none, thank you. We will proceed with a roll call vote.
Councilwoman Spicer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilman Barnes,
Yes.
Councilwoman Reed,
Yes.
Councilwoman Lawler,
Yes.
Councilman French,
Yes.
Mayor Brown.
Yes. Everyone is here. And, so we can do that. Skip that. Okay, public comments. Yeah.
I'm not letting you get away with it.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I'm sorry, I just want to say real quick, to go along with the cops thing that you talked about, as of Tuesday, we're moving Officer Williamson into the community policing position.
Okay.
Actually adjusting people around a little bit on the road, and she's gonna be doing that full-time now for the next 6 months anyway. So regardless of whether or not we get the cops grant, we're gonna actually try this out for 6 months with an officer. So-
Does that create any, shift issues in terms of overtime?
Not really, because we've been running short shifted for quite a while now, as
Okay.
we've been replacing people on and on. And so what we did is, because I'm still actually one person short with Tiffany being in training, and then that'll probably last this entire 6 months.
Okay.
And so instead of having one shift lopsided with another, we're just taking Officer Williamson out of the loop and
Okay.
putting her in and doing this work for the next 6 months, so.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing no further public comment, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved.
Support.
You can pick who is doing it.
I heard Councilwoman Brown and then Councilman